Everybody. I'm Jean Nutt, Principal and Managing Director of Gensler in Boston, also the co-chair of the Real Advantage Committee with Karen Gill, and we're very excited today to host this workshop. So Ryan, if you want to advance.
Sure.
We can actually advance past that. And how to ask a question. We're hoping that people send in their questions and answers. Going to be, I think, an important part of interacting with Ryan and Greta. Next slide. Just a couple of inputs for CoreNet. So we have another CRAVE program coming up on December 7th. It's all about the CREST internship program. Another workshop on December 10th, which is also kind of a controversial topic. Do I need the office space? And then it's just been announced that the Awards of Excellence have been moved to next May. Whoops, that's 2022. And it's going to be held at the Westin Seaport. All about the conversation. Tag us, send any information to Steve Smith. Next. We just go through really quick. And of course, you would have seen it in our video, but huge thanks to our continued support from our corporate partners. And next, our founding circle sponsors, Platinum, next, Gold, and Silver.
You're not going to go through each one?
Right, next. And then on to the workshop. So a couple of quick words about our two speakers. So Ryan, who is on the line. Ryan serves as a Vice President of Global Research and Insights at MillerKnoll. We're starting to get used to saying that, where his team leads the generation and sharing of insights to best serve customers of MillerKnoll brands. With over 25 years of industry experience, Ryan's work has centered on how the places we inhabit can better be designed and managed to support positive, productive experiences. Ryan regularly speaks about the future of work and living and has been featured in Fortune, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, BBC, and beyond. I'm not sure if she's joined us again, but we also have Greta Peterson, who is Senior Manager, Global Workplace Strategy and Development for MillerKnoll. And as a Senior Manager of Global Workplace Strategy and Development, she is responsible for evolving and scaling MillerKnoll's global workplace strategy. Greta finds support in creating dynamic destinations and experiences that drive strategic value for people and the organizations. Using a comprehensive process, tool set, and MillerKnoll's latest research and insights, Greta and her team use data to inform meaningful, actionable design that hold places accountable to people's needs, to MillerKnoll's corporate values, and the broader purpose of design for the good of humankind. So with that, I will hand it over to Ryan. And again, thank you so much for participating. We're really looking forward to a lively conversation.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm glad to be here. Thank you everyone for your patience. In addition to Greta's technological challenges, I've got a dog that's currently protecting me from a dangerous Amazon delivery person in the background. So if you hear him barking, that's the story. But I have the privilege of leading the research and insights team at MillerKnoll. I know that name is new. We're all getting used to it. Just for the sake of clarity, and this is not a plug about us. As you might know, Herman Miller and Knoll and our families of companies have come together. MillerKnoll is the new parent. So Knoll continues to thrive as a brand, as does Herman Miller, alongside 17 others. So our team is basically focused on going out there and doing good primary and secondary research and thinking about not just future of working, but healing, learning, living, playing. And in addition to the research team, we've got a group of folks whose specialization is in applying insights. And we get a chance to work with our own folks within MillerKnoll on our own facilities. And I know that designing workspace is tough anywhere, but imagine being the designer who's doing it for MillerKnoll. Greta is like one of my all-time favorite collaborators. And I've worked with her now for years. She has a background in environmental psychology from Cornell and has just done a wonderful job. So what we want to talk about today is further considerations around hybrid. And what I mean by that is I recognize that a majority of people in the industry now have gotten their head around the notion of hybrid, and that a majority of organizations are going that way. What we wanted to do today was just dig into what it's looked like for us, like how we're trying to live this and walk the talk, because this is a transition that we were in the process of and we are in the midst of. And when I say a transition, it's not just the physical environments, it's really a whole new way of working and thinking about it. And so I'm going to spend a few slides talking a little bit just on our research perspectives on hybrid. Again, trying to go a little bit deeper than maybe what we normally would. And then assuming Greta's back, she will tell you a little bit about what we're doing in our own facilities. And if not, I will grope my way through it, because the good news is our teams are really closely linked. The bad news is I don't think I can do as good a job as she can at talking about it, but that's okay. We will proceed. And by the way, we'll leave time for Q&A at the end. So as I mentioned, Miller Knoll, we have adopted a hybrid workplace strategy. I find it useful, although to be frank, an oversimplification, to think about what is happening in the world as remote first, office first, or hybrid. With remote first organizations determining that working from home is the primary work location for most employees, office first landing on the notion that the office is still the primary workplace for most employees, but hybrid really being a blend of the two, focusing on user choice. And as a result, we've had to get our heads around just what drastic changes this might mean. Now, the reality within our organization is there were teams that were already working this way, including mine. I haven't had any West Michigan-based employees, because I'm in the west part of Michigan, in a long time. And I, for years, probably since 2014, have come into the office when I'd like, which usually is a couple days a week, for a variety of activities that are, I think, uniquely suited to being served in the office. But this wasn't true for a lot of our organization. And if I'm being really blunt, we have a more tenured workforce here in West Michigan that has more established patterns of working than, say, what we might have other parts of the world. And so our HR, IT, real estate, legal, and other teams have come together to form a committee. And this is so common. I'm finding this among almost all of the folks that I talk to, and I think I've talked with over 200 of our customers this year, that these ad hoc committees are really working through the complexities of what hybrid really means. From a facilities and real estate standpoint, I know this is stating the obvious, but it means that the scope of responsibility is not just corporate office. So I think we need to get our heads around the idea that workplace and corporate office are not synonymous. And I know that the remit for a lot of corporate real estate teams has historically been managing that footprint within your portfolio. But I think we can learn a lot from what the IT world has done over the years, which is transition to supporting work wherever it happens, and being unapologetic about the idea that we need to support work wherever somebody might be best productive, and not view hybrid as a marginalization or a reduction of the scope of impact for a corporate real estate team, but instead just a shifting nature of the scope of responsibilities. Now, we've been doing a lot of investigation specifically with Future Forum, and if you haven't come across Future Forum yet, I'd highly encourage you to go to that website. You can also go on the Herman Miller Future of Work Hub. There's some good information there too, but Future Forum was started by Slack, and it includes Boston Consulting Group from your neck of the woods, a group called Management Leadership for Tomorrow, and Herman Miller. And together we've been diving in now for a year into what flexible working really looks like, what hybrid workplace strategies really entail. And there's been some really interesting learnings, one of which is, hey, Greta, good to see you. Although your name is Rich Bettina, so I'm going to call you Rich. One of the things that we find so interesting is that while 76% of people surveyed in the 10,000 person index survey that we do each quarter say they want more flexibility with where they can work, 93% want more flexibility with when they can work. And so I know that sometimes the media portrays what's happening right now as a rejection of life in the office. I think we've concluded that it's really a rejection of the traditional work week, and that there's groups like working parents and people of color and others that we go into depth and explaining why flexibility is uniquely important, but a lot of it has to do with the when. And if I think about even after the big dig is complete there in Boston, as an example, coming in during a commute, maybe coming in at 9:30 after a school drop off saves you 30 minutes from when you would have had to come in at 7:30 before. So it really is about flexibility. And so when we think hybrid, we should not just think the splitting of time between space. We should think more flexibility with when and where and with whom work is done. But there's a good reason to embark upon this. And if you happen to be in Seattle for the CoreNet Global Summit, I got a chance to speak on this on Sunday afternoon. And it was really around this idea that possibly the best benefit of hybrid is creating more equitable work experiences and higher levels of employee engagement. And what I mean by that is organizations are historically used to assigning location based on job function or job title, among other things. But I think what we learned collectively in 2020 and 2021 is that there is a myriad of factors that impact somebody's ability to be productive in one place or the other. So even if I just took this group on this call and I said, you know, I'm going to try to figure out where you're going to be most productive next Tuesday. Your job title might tell me something in terms of the work you do, but I would need to know a lot more. What technology do you use? What's your team dynamics? What's the nature of the work you're doing that day? But then personal stuff too. What's your physical, sensory, cognitive abilities or limitations? What's your home life situation? You got a partner who's taking a Zoom call 3 feet from you. How's your Wi-Fi? I know this sounds crazy, but we just hosted a webinar on the topic of the impact of menopause on the workforce and how 10% of menopause-aged women will resign their positions due to not being accommodated. And it goes way beyond hot flashes. And so by the way, we do webinars every other week as part of our Global Insight group through Herman Miller. So that recording is out there. But it was just another example to say, we really don't know. The employees will know, if they're empowered to do so, what really enables them to be most productive on a given day in a given place. Because even if I could hone in on where you might be most productive next Tuesday, there's no guarantee that that would be true on Wednesday. And so the idea of equitable work experiences, you give more choice, and then you give good choices, and you're just significantly increasing a person's ability to find the place to do their work effectively. Now, some of you, if you come from organizations where that culturally might be anathema, might be saying, whoa, that's off the rails. But there's a responsibility for the employee too. You know, to whom much is given, much is expected. And so we need to make it clear that employees have to live up to a new set of demands. They need to communicate the status of their work. They need to hit deadlines. I mean, it's a give and give relationship on both sides. But the upside is better opportunity for everybody to be successful and higher levels of engagement. And what I'm referencing here specifically is Gallup's historical work on the state of the American workplace. Even in like January of 2020, which I think was the report that came out most recently before the pandemic, there was a piece in there that said, if you give employees more choice, their levels of engagement are higher. Their levels of active disengagement, which is where somebody is so disengaged that they create problems for others, is lower. And interestingly, it showed higher levels of engagement for hybrid than either those that were in the office most of the time or those that weren't in the office most of the time, because it really came down to choice. And ultimately, that the greater choice would create greater engagement. And they went on to say, most people would like to be in the office about 2 to 3 days a week, which, by the way, is what we're also finding. Although it isn't just about days of the week, as I mentioned before, sometimes it's around certain hours in the office, like being there between 10 and 3 to accommodate different things. But this is the payoff. And I'll close these thoughts with saying, because of the complexity here, this is why HR, IT, legal, and other people are jumping into this mix. This is not really something you tuck into a return to office strategy. By the way, I don't really love the return to nomenclature at all. It feels very regressive to me. But even if we call it office reopening or office repopulation or whatever, that process happens of offices being reoccupied over months, not days. And there's a lot to work through here. So we're really talking about a multi-year journey for any organization that goes down this path, including MillerKnoll. Greta, your timing is perfect. I don't know if you can see content, but if you want to unmute, I will transition to our journey slide.
Awesome. That sounds great. Now, first, just an audio check. Can you hear me okay?
What? No, I'm just kidding. It'd be funny if I said nope. That would leave.
Well, and I'm streaming or video through my phone here, so hopefully your viewing angle of my face is okay and appropriate.
You sound great. No, we're good.
Good. Good. Again, apologies for all of the mishaps, but excited to talk about a little bit of kind of putting a lot of what Ryan has just described into action. And I really enjoy sharing our journey because I feel like it's been a journey. It's not been a destination, and it's going to be a very, very long one at that. And so I'd say, just from a big picture perspective, in sharing this with you, I want to give you just a little bit of context in my role. So I see myself as sort of two sides of a single coin, one of that as an employee advocate, and then on the flip side of that, responsible for holding our places accountable to our people, our values, and our point of view, as stated on this slide here. And so I want to kind of share with you a little bit of how we're trying to better practice what we preach, to be truly transparent. So Ryan, if you don't mind transitioning to the next slide. So in terms of kind of practicing, I'm just going to reiterate a few of the sentiments that Ryan has already shared. As we've begun to put a stake in the ground and wrap our arms around what does hybrid work mean to us, we're really trying to pivot our thinking and shifting our approach on how we look at provisioning and how we start to design our office spaces, looking at them as an on-demand destination in support of work that happens both at the office and in our home locations and elsewhere for that matter. So us shifting our perspective on that has really allowed us to think about the office as an opportunity to create unique experiences and to support unique experiences that aren't well supported or well provisioned for in other locations. So that's presented a very exciting opportunity for us, and it is a learning opportunity. And I would say at present, all of the things that we're doing, all of the things that we're thinking about, we're truly in a stage of testing and hypothesizing and seeing if some of our thinking is proving out to be true. And as Ryan mentioned, whatever you're calling kind of return to office, we're really trying to reimagine work and the experience of work for ourselves, for our people all around the globe. And so in doing that, that's really, I think, given us a foundation for change and for testing and iterating and being okay with knowing that we're going to fail. And the key is, can we fail fast? So I'm going to share a little bit about what we're thinking and how we're sort of applying these philosophies on ourselves. So Ryan, if you don't mind going to the next slide. So this is kind of a long list, I'd say a laundry list of some of the things that we're thinking about and some of the assumptions we're planning around. And like I said, a lot of what we're doing right now is hypothesizing. And so these are some of the guardrails and some of the parameters that we've placed around how we're thinking about the future and how we're trying to, I guess, aspire to a new end state. So generally speaking, we're really trying to focus on the long term while accommodating the short term, really trying to shift our thinking, not just from safety, but to a mindset of well-being, I would say. When we think about hybrid work, we're also sort of making some assumptions that work will be blended and that people perhaps on average will be coming into the office 1 to 3 days a week. We've got a lot of really robust amount of data on sort of the sentiment and the employee sentiment globally on hybrid work. And generally speaking, people want to leverage the office, but they also want to leverage it again on demand. A few of the other sentiments I just want to make note of here too is thinking about our desking strategy and how we're biasing a flexible strategy moving forward in favor of flexible desking and more fixed neighborhood approach to planning. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in a moment. But generally speaking, that's a huge lever we've been able to pull from a planning perspective. Historically, we've had a lot of assigned desks, and moving forward, that definitely is a shift we're making for the better. A couple of other things, just thinking about our process. What's really fundamental here is, again, in the spirit of iteration and in the spirit of evolution, we really want to measure in more meaningful ways the work experience and how we can use that data to test, inform, and evolve our workplace strategy is a top priority for us. The desire and the end game here is to create a more equitable and seamless end user experience for our people, no matter where they're located. We have a long ways to go on that front, but at least this starts to kind of scratch the surface at some of those things. Now, I am so glad I'm not driving at the moment. Ryan, I've got a link to a video here, and I am hoping that it works, but it is a short 1.5-minute video or so on some of the sentiments and some of the things that we're doing at our spiritual headquarters here in West Michigan, at our design yard in particular. So I'm hoping, if you don't mind launching that.
I'll launch it, and then use the chat function to let me know if there's any sort of audio issues. Pulling it up now. Here we go. Can you hear it?
I think that what's changed for us in the last year is that we now understand that the offices sit amongst a network of places, including homes, including other offices, including coffee shops. And so I think what we now know is that the office has absolutely a vital role in bringing together people. The design yard front door for us, the goal was for that to be the sort of the tip of the spears, for us to do our best testing, our most advanced thinking, to fail fast, acknowledge it, and then come back to it, change it, and then share that with our customers.
In our design yard transformation project and in all of our pipeline projects, our North Star is putting the employee experience first. As a company, we really prioritize this notion of equitability and inclusivity in terms of employees' work experience at the company and even in the physical environment. We're adopting a hybrid model, future focused. And so with that comes leveraging the home office experience and the workplace experience to help people do their best work no matter where they're located. Given the freedom and flexibility of choice, we can help bolster things like engagement, which also helps with attraction and retention and can help improve other organizational outcomes like productivity. We're really trying to flip the model, if you will, shifting towards a much more group-based and shared kind of strategy. So when we surveyed our employees, the activities that weren't well supported at home included this notion of informal socialization at work. So this idea of community socialization. The second is intensive team focus and collaboration. And lastly, thinking about tending to individual intensive focus work.
We wanted that initial reaction of employees and visitors to be one that spoke to the brand spirit and just made people feel good when they entered the space.
It was really important for us to approach this project from a point of empathy when we were thinking about things like color, pattern, all of these visual levers that we could pull to enhance the mood of the space. That was really important that we thought about it from that human perspective. This iteration of the design yard is specifically designed to encourage socialization.
In the plaza specifically, we wanted the colors and the patterns and the textures to be a more vibrant, welcoming experience, something that employees weren't necessarily seeing at home every day. Just get people excited to be here. For the more focused workspaces, we wanted to provide employees with places where they could be supported by the product and with an ergonomic chair, height adjustable desk, double monitors, high res monitors, in some cases, correct lighting. In each of the meeting rooms, we now have double monitors on all of the walls so that you can see who you're speaking to, as well as see what's being presented, knowing that not everybody will be in the office at the same time. We will have to collaborate with people that are off-site. We have provided more phone rooms, more meeting rooms for employees, knowing that with this hybrid model, technology is always going to be at the forefront, and we need our rooms to support that.
What I've noticed is that those technology enhancements have made the process of switching to hybrid working really smooth.
Knowing that our future is hybrid and that we're now looking at our office as an on-demand resource and tool and an on-demand destination. We're going to be looking at our utilization data as a proxy for destination or draw, if you will, with the goal and the hope that our utilization will increase as a result of being able to offer people experiences and settings that aren't well supported or offered in a home environment. I think we can all say and agree that the world is always changing, and so should we.
Cool. Hopefully that audio went well.
That's right. Yeah, hopefully.
Oops, except that I just let it continue on to the next video, which I think is of me. Cool. So I'll get back to the right part of the presentation here.
Perfect. We can move on to the next slide. So the point of that video was really to just add a visual layer and some additional depth and content around kind of reiterating and really hitting home on some of these points that we're trying to make and these shifts that we're making from a big picture perspective. So as the video was describing, we're really pulling on that lever of how we're provisioning our desking future focused from one of that has historically been fixed to one that is flexible and unassigned future focused. And then on the flip side, thinking about collaborative spaces, historically those have been provisioning that has serviced the entire population, not owned by any one group. Future focused, we're taking a much more aggressive approach at assigning collaborative spaces, project room, team rooms, what have you, to dedicated groups of people with restricted access, actually, for reservation capabilities. So thinking about this from a big picture perspective has allowed us to rethink our space allocation strategies with more of a 70-30 historically, 70% of the footprint in most of our office facilities being desking and 30% more of the group and community dedicated space, to flipping that model. So more of that 70 dedicated to group and community and 30% of the footprint being dedicated to individual work, servicing a broader spectrum of individual work beyond the desk.
Hey, Greg,
So,
can
yeah.
I just comment that 70-30 flip, that 70 that you were thinking about in terms of group and community, that includes neighborhoods, which actually have shared individual spaces within them, right? So I just wanted to clarify that it wouldn't be right to interpret this as 70% group spaces and 30% individual spaces. It's more around ownership. And by the way, I think the growth of neighborhood-based planning is one of the most interesting things we can keep an eye on in the midst of the next couple of years, because Greta's heard me say this, but I had this workplace strategist in Melbourne say to me last year, as Australia and New Zealand and Singapore opened up much earlier than the rest of the world, she said, I think going to the office is a little bit like going to a party. You're going to go there to see the people that you haven't seen, but there's no way you're going without a friend. And for us, activity-based working where everything is shared, I think it's too much. Like you go and you're not exactly sure where to put yourself. You don't know where any of your friends are. So this approach towards, we have this clubhouse and I know where my people are, but I also have places to socialize. And then I have places to completely retreat and be away from everyone. Like, to me, that is a magic balance that I think we're getting much closer to achieving.
And I'd say with that neighborhood-based approach too, Ryan, us starting to get into the world of desk booking and hopefully helping with some employee engagement and onboarding on that front will help empower people to self-align with the teams that suit the work. So that in addition to knowing where you can find your close ties and having that neighborhood home base, if you will, you also have the freedom and flexibility to navigate into other neighborhoods that suit the work at hand or that support you in your work. So I'm really excited to see where some of this takes us as more people come back to our offices. So good point of clarification, Ryan. Thank you. I think we can move on to the next slide.
Yeah, I'm just going to highlight, we have provided work from home product. As I mentioned, I've talked to several hundred of our customers around the world this last year. I think not a majority, but many are moving towards thinking about what it looks like to support working from home for one simple reason, which is if somebody spends, 2 days a week from home, it's 40% of their productivity and health. And so the notion of providing 2 webcams or 2 chairs might at first sound expensive and redundant, but I think over the long haul, many, if not most organizations will go there.
Yes. And I guess One area, and I guess being transparent about what we've learned so far, if you don't mind going back real quick,
Sure.
Ryan, I think it's worth mentioning here that the work from home product reimbursement program, we still have a lot of work to do on this. We launched it over a year and a half ago. It was in the summer of 2020 in June. It was a global program, and essentially it was a one-time 12-month limited time offer. And we still are needing to figure out a way for this program to live on beyond the pandemic, and trying to navigate the complexities of new hires and who is eligible and who is not. There's some work to be done on that front. Us working with HR in particular on those types of things, and seeing how this can continue to scale and live in the coming months and years.
When we've been benchmarking organizations around the world that have done it, I would say conversations with your tax and accounting team is really important too. So like the Aeron chair I'm sitting in, technically Herm Miller owns. If I look at some of our other customers like Shopify, they provided it essentially as taxable compensation. So like you choose what you need, we'll give you that product, but it's considered compensation. So yeah, you're going to pay some taxes on it, but you own it. And the other thing that I'm seeing is much more of a focus on training along with product. So things like, how do you have good posture? How do you maintain a healthy balance? We have our work from home tool, wfh.hermmiller.com within Herman Miller, and there's been about 22,000 people that have used it. So we've got some good data on what people are struggling with and how to help. But I think there's lots of opportunities for just good, solid training to help people be more productive and healthy when they're outside of the office.
Most certainly.
Sorry, I could riff on that topic for a full hour.
No, and I could too.
On.
And I would say, just to throw it out to the group, one area that we haven't quite cracked yet, and I think a lot of organizations are struggling with, is when we think about this idea of equity in the built-in or the equity of experience. One area that has been hard to tap is the ability to whiteboard when you're remote, or participate in a meaningful way when you're at home. And whiteboarding is happening in a physical room, in a physical space. There are some webcam workarounds, there's different orientations of cameras and things like that, but that nut hasn't been cracked yet, at least from our perspective, and we haven't gotten that part right yet. So when we think about equity in making sure that there's a sense of inclusion and equitable experience for people remote and in room, that intensive team collaboration is kind of hard to support when analog tools are necessary, or iteration is necessary. So Ryan, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Oh, so much. And if we're not careful, this is going to turn into a catch up between you and me, because I'm realizing it's been too long. Yeah, I just spoke at as the keynote at this big IT conference, and the IT world is very concerned that office reopenings will mean the reversal of their digital transformation plan. Yep. So basically, our conversations and our content went to the cloud. And having people making decisions in hallways after meetings, or having content on whiteboards that people can't access remotely, I don't think that's a good thing. I think the space needs to be viewed as an interface to that. So like, as an example, there was 12 new thought starters that were released on Herm Miller's website last week. One of them is a meeting room design specifically to accommodate more digital, like mural whiteboarding, more Zoom, breaks away from traditional meeting space design. But having said that, I will say we're just in the process of really prototyping to what extent this stuff works too. So we're going to try to save time for Q&A. I'll shut up, and we can always revisit it if people want to talk about it.
So we just have a couple more slides. So this one I just wanted to share as a perspective at a building scale of the first phase of this project, which is highlighted by the lower left quadrant called the front door. And that is the area that was featured in the video that you just watched. And it hasn't been but 25 years or so that we've actually revisited a total transformation of the entire building. And looking at a building scale transformation has really allowed us to do more with less, to put it bluntly. Basically, we were able to give up about 30% of the building footprint in support of more amenity and specialty spaces. So in this case, at this building, we were able to relocate our archives from a different building in the general area of West Michigan into this building located on the far right. We've added a gym, we've added a design studio in support of product development activities, and a makerspace in particular. So we've made some really exciting changes in enhancements from kind of a differentiation standpoint, thinking about what makes the office unique and what experiences is it able to provide that the home cannot. Those are some of the levers we're trying to pull from a building scale transformation perspective.
And I know it was in the video, but I'll just say as a user, those outdoor spaces are transformative. I think our relationship with the outdoor changed in the pandemic. It was our place of escape, and I think we rediscovered the value of fresh air as an example. And so even though we live in West Michigan, which kind of like New England has not a real long time span as far as great weather, for me, like those outdoor destinations are just coveted and have made a huge difference.
Yeah. So big picture perspective, none of these transformations, if we're going to sustain a level of change at the pace that we're operating at, is not possible unless we have a lot of contingents seated at the table. And so we're really taking a systems thinking approach to looking at our projects. And our projects are inclusive of transforming not just place, but thinking about people, thinking about the HR aspects, the policy, the cultural aspects of change necessary to sustain and help people flourish over time. And also the processes. As Ryan mentioned, there's so much digital transformation traction that we've achieved over the past 20 months. And when we look at our future, there's so much room for us to maintain that momentum and better support how we're interfacing with information, leveraging software and platforms and new tools and new ways. And we've got to have IT at the table in all of those discussions. And it's not a layer that we think of as the last layer until a design is complete. We have got people seated at the table on HR, on facilities, real estate, IT. Again, all part of the conversation at the initial onset and conception of a project in the pipeline. So a lot of good work happening on and integrating the approach to deliver a more equitable and inclusive experience for our people. And then lastly, just wanted to share for those of you who love data, I know I do, and I don't want to bore you with the details here, but I think some of the things that we've made from a change standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, desking was a big thing that we've changed. We've decreased our number of assigned desks by 84%. And on the flip side, we have increased our audio private spaces by over 500%. So when we think about supporting the spectrum of individual work and knowing that there's this very, very imminent need for audio privacy and in some cases visual privacy in the office, we are leveraging that pretty intensely and very purposefully in how we're planning for our future offices. So that was another metric that really stood out, at least to me, in looking at some of these changes over time. Now, for every project, we've got a dashboard that we've established so we can start to track our aggregated trends over time to see how our floor plates are shifting and to see, again, where we're tracking from a metric and measurement standpoint on each and every project. So some exciting progress underway there as well.
By the way, LT is leadership team, right?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. We can pause and do some Q&A. I wanted to point out a couple of things. One is that video you saw, as well as season 1 of our Looking Forward, Herman Miller's Looking Forward podcast is at this link. And we touched upon some things thematically that we go much deeper into on that podcast, like the digitization of buildings with data with actually somebody local to the Boston area, Dr. Andrea Chagou, who leads the Real Estate Innovation Lab at MIT. We get into what creating belonging looks like with the head of the Othering and Belonging Institute at Berkeley. I think we've got another New Englander in Adrian Rowe from Raytheon, who's talking a lot about rethinking workplace strategy. So a lot of resources there. As far as our own journey, I'll close with this thought. One of the things that I've appreciated most about what Greta and the team have done is we have customers rolling through these spaces. So it's really weird sometimes when our spaces aren't full, but recognizing that we want workplace to be viewed as a resource and as something that's desirable, we've avoided saying, everybody get back. And if I'm being really transparent, that's tough when there's competitors in your market that have done so. And so the spirit of what we've communicated is basically around community and belonging, and recognizing that so many of the people showing up to offices now are those with smaller networks. There's kind of a stereotype that young people don't want to come in the office. I have found at many of our customers that it's the people who are newer to the organization, including young people, that are showing up going, I just want to know somebody. And it's the people with the 20-year networks. It's like, I know who to call. I don't need to go in there. So the communication has very much been around your value. Like, you're part of this culture. We need you investing in other people. We need you there to help people build their networks. And if you want to come in and sit on one of those green sofas and drink coffee for 8 hours, that's totally cool. But the point is, we value you. So don't be a stranger. And I will say every week, it feels like there's more and more energy. And I get out there at least 2 or 3 days a week, and I love it. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Jill if you've got additional slides. And an early apology from me. I'm speaking to an audience that's almost as important as this one, 25 high schoolers in my sophomore daughter's class in 25 minutes. So I have to peel out of here in about 4 minutes, but happy to take some Q&A, or I know, Greta, you can too. And if anybody wants to connect with us on LinkedIn, that's a really good place to do so as well. Jill, Karen?
Hi, everyone. Jill Blanco with CoreNet New England. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and put it in the Q&A. I'll be fielding those questions for Greta and Ryan. Maybe everyone's typing all at once.
Or maybe it's a shy group. That's okay too.
Yeah, well, before we close this out, then I'll just share my screen here.
There is one that might feel good. Oh, there's a couple now. A couple that definitely feel like they're in your world, Greta, on communication and booking. I will go off camera and let you take care of it.
The booking system we're using is through Microsoft Outlook. Just similar to how you would book a meeting room, we're using that as for desk booking as well. And then the other question, I don't think I see the other question yet. Let's see.
If you wanted to, any tips on communicating with staff about hybrid work?
Yes. So as far as communications go, I think there are a few things. People need to receive things a lot of times. And it's a lot of times upwards of 7+ times in order for things to sink in. So redundancy is key. Another thing is multiple vehicles. And I think email, a lot of things get lost in emails because we're all bombarded by so many emails each and every day. So in addition to likely emails, we've been leveraging SharePoint sites as almost web-based portals for employees to go to pull information from, in addition to the information we push to them through email, as well as some of our other internal corporate platforms. We leverage a communication tool similar to Yammer, I would say, called the Lounge. So a lot of things around hybrid work, tips and tricks, things of that nature get pushed out through the Lounge as almost the primary method because we're trying to increase adoption of that tool. And it's pretty accessible, also very social. So that's been another tool that has been very useful in helping us communicate around hybrid work. Leadership buy-in and leadership messaging too. That's also been a big important key.
And it looks like we have another question. Do you find that moving from one neighborhood to another more difficult for your employees as projects change?
Well, because the desking is unassigned, no. However, I'm saying that only based on my own experience. We don't have a significant contingent of people back in the office yet. So I'd say it's a little too early to tell. My hope and goal, though, is that the answer continues to be no, and that people do feel empowered with the knowledge and the tools they need to choose the neighborhood that best suits them.
Great. If anyone else has any last minute questions, we have about 5 minutes left. Thank you, Greta.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, while we're waiting for those to come in, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to remind folks of the upcoming events that we have for CoreNet New England. Hopefully everyone's looking at it. I see here, so we have the CRAVE program, All About Crest Internship 2022. That will be December 7th from 12 to 1 p.m. It's a free webinar. And then we also have a new event up. It's the Real Advantage Workshop, Do I Need Office Workspace? Oh, while I'm doing that, it looks like we have another question coming in for you, Greta. So this says, any experience in working in a highly matrix organization where you might be assigned to a specific org, but be part of a multi-function project team? Which neighborhood should they belong to?
I would say that we've got maybe a few business units that are functioning more as highly matrixed business units within the organization as a whole. And I would say, as best practice, they do have their own team or business unit based neighborhood. However, based on the tasks at hand and the projects they're supporting, they would be able to, because of the unassigned desking strategy, self-align with the legal neighborhood or the finance neighborhood or a product development neighborhood in support of whatever project that they were working on. We've baked in a lot of buffer in support of more of the transient population, the people who are floating around and who may not necessarily belong to a neighborhood but need to work out of the neighborhood. So there's quite a bit of flexibility that has been built into the desking strategy to accommodate some of those needs. Hopefully that answers your question.
Great. And then we have another one. You mentioned the 70-30 space, but didn't catch ownership, not seats.
Can you repeat the question, Jill? What about the 70-30?
It just looks like they asked, but didn't catch ownership, not seats on the 70-30 space.
That's the 70-30 is more in terms of space allocation, which looks at the proportion of the footprint that's dedicated to certain types of things. So it's not a matter, it wasn't more so a matter of counting or quantity as it was the percentage of the footprint.
Great. And then I think we have time for one more question. And this question is, how have you accommodated neurodiversity through the new neighborhood layout?
Yes. So when we think about inclusion and belonging in the physical environment, it's expanding to those with varied abilities. So when we historically think about ADA, it is much, much more broad and much, much more deep than that. I'd say in terms of neurodiversity, part of our strategy involves being very purposeful about variety of settings, variety of postures, and variety of energy, which is expressed through color, materiality, and texture. And so what you will see across the footprint is a variety of different spaces, open and enclosed, reservable and unreservable, large and small, to spaces that, and as I mentioned earlier, postures, so lounge postures, seated postures, standing postures. And then from a materiality standpoint, I would say it spans the spectrum of more public spaces being more bright and colorful, and more private spaces being much more subdued and much more quiet, again, to serve a spectrum of preferences depending on a person's situation.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Greta. That was the last question.
Great.
I just want to thank you and Ryan again so much for hosting this webinar. And I do want to let the folks on the call know about an upcoming event. I had mentioned this earlier. It's the next workshop, and the link to join that is in the chat. So I think without any other questions, thank you. We can end this a little bit early for folks.
Perfect. Thanks for having us,
Thanks
Jill.
so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.